Hello, everybody. We're just going to give everybody a few minutes to log in and get started.
Okay, come on, everybody.
We would love for anybody who has access to be on camera to do so today if you have a chance. We'd love to see your smiling faces. And I know we have about 30 some people who've RSVP'd, so I'm just gonna take a few minutes while people get logged in. Good. It's good that you're all joining by camera. Nice to see you all. We'll hopefully start meeting in person again. All right, well, I'm gonna get started. This is officially not one of the 4 scheduled assisted living small provider meetings that we have scheduled for this year.
Jill, you're on mute.
Oh my gosh, I've been talking to you all for like the last 5 minutes. Sorry, thanks, Patty. All right, well, I've been saying nice to see you all on camera. I was asking everybody who can be on camera. We would love to see you today. It's been too long since we've tried to have one of these meetings in person. So if you can join us by camera, that would be fantastic. So what I already said to myself that you didn't get a chance to hear me say is welcome. Welcome to this first meeting of 2022. This is officially not one of the 4 committee meetings of our brand new officially formed assisted living small provider meetings. This is kind of what I'll call an add-on meeting, if you will. This is a result of last year. We tried on this group for size to see if we should continue to make this a formal committee. And we did, and you have all graciously added your names to the committee and your time, to add your time, talent, and expertise to the group. This meeting is a result of some of the meetings that we had last year when we met with you to hear kind of what some of the issues were with what's going on out there. And we asked DHS to join us today to kind of talk through as a result of everything we talked about last year. And if you missed it, you should see kind of the abbreviated notes that we sent to DHS about what we want to hear from them today. And I'll introduce myself if you haven't met me yet. I'm Jill. My last name is pronounced Shavy. It looks like shoe or shoey or shui, but it's pronounced Shavy. And I'm on staff here at Care Providers in Minnesota. And I'll kick it off by introducing our CEO, Patty Cullen, so she can welcome you all to the group.
Welcome, everyone. So because I sit tall, you can see my face above the label of your name, which is a trick that I've had to learn how to do. So I'm President and CEO. Welcome to everyone here. Just a couple of housekeeping things because we are using a platform that's a little bit different than Zoom. So I wanted folks to know, once we hit 26 videos, the next person can't turn their camera on. So, and Jill would rather see all of you. So I may opt to turn my camera off and let everyone else have a chance to do that. The other thing is we have too many people with a microphone on causes feedback to those speaking. So I put in the chat, which is another thing I'm going to share with you, that if you're not talking to try to mute yourself if you can. I know it's a little bit difficult if you're calling in to try to figure that out. And then that little round circle on usually the top right is the chat. And we will, if you have things that you really want to share, please do. We can print off and save the chat. So if there's things that you want to make sure get into the conversation, but you don't have a chance to do that, please use the chat. And I know that's a longer intro than you ever wanted, but welcome everyone.
So I will also introduce the other staff, the care providers in Minnesota, and let them I'll say their names. They can introduce themselves. Todd.
Yeah, hi everyone. My name's Todd Bergstrom. I work with Care Providers in Minnesota, and I was very much looking forward to this meeting today, more than most of you probably know. But I'm for whatever you want to call it, I have to leave and go to a different appointment. So good luck with everything today. Thanks.
Thanks, Todd. Toby?
Hey everybody, Toby Pearson. I do a lot of the advocacy for Care Providers in Minnesota. If you have questions about what's going on at the legislature, want to keep up to date as they start their new session, I'm the one to email. I'm happy to talk with any of you anytime about what's going on with the legislature. Nice to meet you all.
Nicole?
Hi, I'm Nicole Matson. I also work with Toby doing advocacy and then workforce issues. I was previously a nursing home administrator in a metro area nursing home, and workforce is kind of my thing. I serve as the Hennepin Carver Workforce Board Chair and also serve on the Minnesota Association of Workforce Boards. So I'm your person if you have any workforce issues.
Great, thanks. So, and thanks to Patty to give you a little housekeeping too about how our platform works. So we just wanted to have this kind of first half an hour before DHS arrived to kind of go through what the intent of today's meeting is. And that was to hear from DHS about why they've made some changes that they've made in the last year. You're all aware of the changes. We want to hear from them what's happening, what's going on, why they felt that they need to make the changes. One of the biggest questions that you all ask us is, well, where would people go if you weren't in existence? And so one of our questions to DHS is, and one of the reasons that people can live with you now under customized living is because customized living includes state plan nursing services. And if the person wasn't on customized living, there's a question about where people would get state plan nursing services. So you can see that on the handout that we sent to DHS. We would like to hear from them where they think that people are going to be able to get the nursing services that you provide to people. Because a lot of the other DHS funded services don't include nursing, as you all know. So our goal today is for you to hear from them. Unfortunately, they're giving us only 30 minutes of their time. And so there's not going to be time for us to ask them questions necessarily, or from you all to ask questions. But so we're going to take the half an hour after they're gone to kind of decompress, talk about what they've told us, make a new list, if you will, of kind of what we heard and what further questions that you have, so we can start strategizing and figuring out what the next steps with this committee and with DHS is. This is a unique time because it is the start of the legislative session, so there will be opportunities for Nicole and Toby too to talk about what we've heard with legislators. Toby, did you have something you wanted to talk about regarding that at all?
Yeah, sure. I can just tell you that we've started meeting with legislators, kind of going through a lot of our initial asks with them. We've been raising the issue of kind of what's been going on with the CADI customized living. We've been raising the issue with what's going on with assisted living in general. I think there are a number of questions that legislators have raised with us that we've been communicating with them about. I think for you folks, after we hear from this presentation from DHS, I think it's going to be great to kind of have a little bit of a meeting for us to say, hey, who are your legislators? How do you reach out to them? What do we want to start telling them now after we've heard DHS's explanation? Partially because it's going to be very difficult to get anything done this year at the legislative session because it is a quote-unquote short session. But if we make enough noise, we can hopefully get some things changed for you. And this is kind of the start of a process that we hope makes some positive changes that we've been pushing along for probably the last 3 or 4 months in our informal meetings.
So I'm just gonna open it up right now. Does anyone have any initial questions? Feel free to unmute yourself. Do you have any initial questions about our meeting today with DHS?
Hi, and this is for Midwest Residential. The question that I have is just clarification from DHS and the statute for that they passed 256B.4914 sub 16 that actually put some rate caps on the maximum staffing portion hours. We just need a clarification on how they come up with the data behind that case mix, because we are having an issue both in ADL mental health side of it, that they put a cap for 4 hours, but there's no explanation of what is what. So most of the case managers, and also the county case managers, are having difficulty inputting and the data, saying that there's nothing they can do, and especially they say only for 2 hours for mental health or 4 hours. So, and we don't have a way to know how are they making those decisions. At the same time, the exemption that they put out online, we did it and we went through that. It's basically they're saying it's no, there's no way they will give an exemption for it. So I would suggest, as care provider, I've been looking at the legislative proposal that you guys are making right now. If we could if you could add some languages on the proposal saying that, and this should be based on the assessment. It should not be based on what you guys only think. I understand the case mix has this data behind it, but it should be an exactly assessment that's been done and proven and record both from when it comes to providers and the doctors and hospitals, So, for example, we had a case where somebody's coming from a mental institution locked for 24/7, and it's not Hennepin County, but the thing is, they say that it's only for 2 hours. Somebody's coming from 24/7 care mental health, and DHS just say no. There's a variant, but they are making they will tell you, they will tell us a variant, or there's a case that you can make, but it's very hard. I don't know if I gone through that the exemption part of it. So that's one thing I would say. If we could add as legislation something that will say it should be based on the assessment of the need of the individual with the proven records and hours. So that's all.
Thank you. And I'm hoping that if you look at the document titled Assisted Living Small Provider Committee, and I think the document is called Topics for Natasha Mers. That is one of the bullets in there that we would like to have clarified. So Natasha Mers is works for the Department of Human Services, and she is one of the directors. So she is one of the top dogs that we asked to join. She has several of her team that is joining us today as well. We're not exactly sure who will talk about each one of our bullet points, but she is joining us, and her team will too. So Daisy, I hope that, thank you for that. I hope that is one of the things that they addressed today, and based on what we sent over.
So I have a comment.
Yeah, Zania, go ahead.
Hey, this is Zania. So I think one of the biggest issues in regards to the case mix is that they did not notify us, and they did not give us advanced, they didn't give us any advance warning that we were all going to get so much money cut down. And so in this time right now with the pandemic, with the staffing crisis, with us paying more money than we ever have before for staffing, they just decided to implement this, the case mix, which included rate cuts, but they told us pretty much like the day of, like, hey, and by the way, everybody has this case mix and here you go. And I think it's extremely inconsiderate. And today they will probably go through a whole guideline on why they did the case mix. I'm not so much interested in like why they did the case mix, because I think a lot of people know why. They are saying that there is overspending, and the governor wanted to cut $100 million from the budget. From the, I'm pretty sure it was the Blue Ribbon Commission that they wanted to cut $100 million. And so that is where this case mix and this 24-hour limit came out of. They want to reduce the spending for residential care. But I think the lack of consideration in regards to this pandemic and the increased costs and inflation costs are what really have made this situation really difficult. And so they can talk about why they did it, but I would hope that they would brisk over that really quickly and really talk about what are they going to do now, because now you've cut rates, and everybody, every time we get a service agreement, we're getting our rates cut, and now you're making it impossible for people to keep up with competitive wages in this staffing crisis. So less about why you did it, but more about what are you going to do right now, and what are you going to do if 800 providers decide that they can't care for hundreds or thousands of clients. So I think that's really what the conversation should be about.
He's a good guy. He has a lot of.
And you can see too, one of the second bullet points, big bullet points are about transparency. So hopefully they'll address some of those transparency issues too. Yeah, we hear you.
I have a question. Well, some kind of clarification, hopefully. The moratorium on enrolling setting new customized living setting, serving in the single family home for fewer participants. So, I mean, what category of people will fall into that setting, setting new customized living settings. And also, when they register new customized living that for residents of 5 and over.
Yeah, Elvis, have you seen the moratorium language? You need me to send that to you?
Yes, please. I've not seen it yet.
Yeah, I will do that. Probably after the meeting, but I'll send it to you.
Hello, my name is Linda.
Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry, yeah. So I have a little question to join what Zara said. It's about the case mix factor. For the mental health crisis clients who do not have a lot of ADL problems, because 85% of our clients do not have ADL problems. How do you factor in the main problem which the clients have, which is mental health, instead of ADLs? If you're telling us that you're going to put in so much, maybe 4 hours of ADLs, and give us just 2 hours of mental health, it doesn't help our clients. So I really don't know how we're going to factor that into the case mix that is, sent to us to look at. So it's kind of, we kind of need explanation on how to do that.
Video, right there.
90% of our clients are not needing our help with ADLs. It's more of mental health. Thank you.
I would assume some nursing services too, although it's not ADLs. Linda, it's medication management, correct?
Correct.
Mix is a lot driven on ADLs.
Exactly.
Yeah, I'm with you. Okay. Thank you. So we're, I think we're really fortunate to have the DHS team joining us today. So we're really grateful that they're going to come. They're going to start joining here in a few minutes. I'll just say, maybe some of you missed it, but if you can be on camera, we would love for you to be on camera. I think that all of us here, care providers, think it's really important that the they hear from us all the time, but they should see you too, and they should see who the providers out there are. So if you can be on camera, we really encourage you to be on camera. I can tell you that I'm looking forward to needing a haircut here soon, but I would much prefer to see you up there than. Patty, any last words before DHS starts joining us?
That's okay, because she don't know.
No, I think this is stage one. One of the reasons that I'm on the call is I have worked with Natasha and Natasha's bosses for a long period of time, and I do want to hear directly from them. I think whoever made the point about the process stinking, I mean, that is totally spot on, that this has been an ongoing issue with this division of DHS, and so I think it's important to focus on the implications of the workforce during COVID in some of this, because they're all like, they want to fix the workforce in every setting, and that should mean your setting too. So I would hope they highlight that it's a little bit different today than it was when they passed this legislation, that you have to compete for the same people that everyone else does, which is a challenge at best. So I'm going to sit back and not, usually in these I will be blunt, usually in these meetings with state agencies, I am very direct and some would say crabby. But today I'm not going to do that. I am just going to listen, but trust me that the crabbiness will come out when it needs to at a later time. Is that what I need to say?
That's a good way to say it, Patty. Thanks. All right, so it's probably just a few more minutes before they start joining us. So any other comments or questions?
Can we have Doug pop on too? Because I think he didn't introduce. Yep, he didn't introduce himself, and Doug's role is less about getting the money and more about how do you stay in compliance. So I'll let him introduce himself too.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Doug Beerty. I'm the Vice President of Member Services at Care Providers Minnesota. As Patty said, my primary role is at the regulatory side, so not the payment side, but the regulatory side. And I do a lot of interacting with the health department, not as much with DHS, but the health department. So glad to help you in any way I can.
Thanks, Doug. Sorry I didn't see you on earlier.
Really? What happened? Yeah.
All right. So after DHS is done around 4 o'clock, then we'll stay on. Like I just said, I know there's a whole bunch of people that keep joining, so that's why I'm kind of repeating myself. We're going to stay on and just kind of debrief, talk about next steps, and Toby too is going to talk about some more grassroots efforts that we need to initiate when DHS is gone. So.
And just one more comment again, you feel free to use the chat, which is the circle feature on the top right side of here, if you want to make sure, if you have questions or you're unclear, because we will do a follow-up with DHS as well to send them questions or comments after their brief time. So feel free to use that because we don't have a lot of time. So let's take advantage of the chat as much as we possibly can. And one of the things also before you leave, if you need to duck out early, Toby, one of the things he would tell you is we are always looking for people to come to the Capitol. Well, we don't come to the Capitol right now because it's all virtual, to tell their story of the implications. So if you would be willing to be a testifier if our bill comes up, or you have a caregiver you'd like to feature, we'd love to have you on our list of people that we need to call up when we have committee hearings. So feel free, if you're willing to do that, just to put your name and email in the chat so we know to call you.
And if there's anyone on the phone, we don't see your name in our participant list. If there's anyone on the phone, will you please send Sarita or myself email and let us know that you are actually on the phone? That would be great. All right, well, we'll just kind of pause here. Yep, we'd love to see your smiling faces. So join us, and then I think DHS will be on here in just a few minutes.
Vice Chair, small providers like this is how clear it is. Vice Chair, it's going to be nomination. Count. Okay. Reports, and that's who the name of this.
So I'll just, until they come, I guess we can, you don't have to have total silence, but, you know, if the other item on our list for DHS2 is all of the waiver reimagine activity. So we're hopeful to hear how CADI and BI fits into their waiver reimagine plan as well. Because to date, I don't know that there has been much input from providers of your size into that work. So we're hoping that we get some more information on that too. And if there's ways that providers can join that work as well. Sonia, I know you've had some communication about that work, right?
No, I did apply for the the committee, but I never heard anything back. So I don't know if anybody else got on there.
If any of you page down to page 2 and 3 of the document that we sent to DHS. Todd, who had to leave the meeting today, put together some interesting data about small providers that I think you'll find really interesting, and where around the state small providers are located.
Hey, Jill.
Yeah.
Elliot here from New Horizon. Just a point on what Zanya said a minute ago. I did also apply to be in that committee.
Yeah.
We would reimagine, and we haven't heard anything. One of the things so frustrating for small providers like us is our decisions are made, and small providers are often trying to catch up after decisions are made, and it's very difficult. So maybe if it could be a proposition to them, whomever it is, whenever that committee is created, let's have someone, a small provider on that committee, so that we can also have a voice.
And then I can see a couple of DHS people are joining us now, but what I'll say too is for the group is, I know how busy you are, but a lot of this information is in our action newsletter that comes out on Thursday afternoons. And so this is what I tell everybody. It's more information than you'll ever want to know. But on Thursday afternoons or Friday mornings, if you can go through our newsletter and look at that we kind of put in there who the article is geared towards. And if it says assisted living, it's something that you should pay attention to, or all members, it's something you should pay attention to. So a lot of that information is there. So I just want to make sure, I know you have so much to do and so much reading going on already, but make sure to use that resource too. That's a lot. It's one of the ways we communicate with everyone. So.
For me.
Hi, DHS folks. Matt, I see you on, and I see a few other DHS folks I'm not as familiar with. Welcome. Matt, can you hear us? How about Colin? Can you hear us?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
Yep, we can hear you.
Okay. Matt just messaged me. He's having a few audio issues.
You know who's taking the lead? Is Natasha taking the lead with our group? There she is.
Yes, that's the plan.
I think, Natasha, you're on mute if you're trying to talk to us. Famous last words, right?
I know. Yes, hello, I am here.
Good. Thank you for joining us. It's been a long time. We haven't seen you in a long time. Welcome.
Thank you.
I'll give you a little tee up. Are you ready if I just give you a little introduction?
I am. I'm wondering about the meeting facilitation. I think my assumption was that you all were going to facilitate and we were responding, but is that not what we're doing?
Sure. We had actually just thought you were going to just talk for a half an hour about everything we sent over to you, but we certainly can facilitate the meeting and you can respond. That's perfectly fine.
Yeah, I think that might be more helpful than me just talking at you for 30 minutes.
Okay, sounds good. So welcome to our assisted living small provider group. I asked the participants if they can to be on camera so you can see who our members are. This group of members of Care Providers of Minnesota have joined the small committee. They are all small in size, 10 units or less. They all have challenging issues, including issues with issues, concerns, questions about CADI customized living, BI customized living. So we invited you today, so hopefully we can hear from DHS and hear from you on some of the things that are of concern from these providers. So welcome to the group. We'll spare you from going through and introducing everybody because in the interest of time, we'd rather hear from you. So I'll just start off and I'm going to work off the sheet that we already sent you if that works for you. And then you can see there's a host of Care Providers in Minnesota staff on too, Toby and Patty and Nicole and Doug. So if you would give us an overview of the 2021 legislatures and the changes to CADI and BI, if you want to just kick off with what changed in 2021, maybe that would be the best place to start.
Sure, yeah, I am happy to provide that overview.
Maybe a quick introduction to the group of who you are too.
Very good. Hi everyone, my name is Natasha Mers and I am the Division Director for the Disability Services Division at the Department of Human Services. So part of our business includes the administration and setting standards for CADI, CAC, BI, and DD waivers, as well as personal care assistance and home care nursing we hold the policies for and line up overall to the compliance with Medicaid rules, just like the rest of the agency, as the state Medicaid agency has those Medicaid compliance requirements. So we work on that with our programs and continuously trying to improve them and respond to what's been directed to us by the legislature. So as you all know, there were some significant changes in some of the ability to deliver customized living under those disability waivers, CADI included. So, kind of overview of some of those changes that I think Jill did a nice job identifying on the document for this meeting was a direction to the department to implement residential support services criteria and limit the eligibility, potentially limit the eligibility for provider controlled settings. And this was a directive from the legislature, and I think it's part of supporting the implementation of informed choice policy, which also passed in 2021, which is really about making sure that people understand that they have options to receive services in settings that aren't controlled by the providers, that's an important part of the choice process, and that residential access criteria is also about making sure that people that use that higher level or higher intensive service really are needing that level of services and supports, so that resource is available to people that have higher and complex needs. Similarly, I think, the moratorium on those CL settings is really about trying to control growth in that particular service model. I think one of our issues that we were trying to solve for and that the legislature was concerned about is seeing the growth in spending on customized living for CADI and BI go way beyond what we had forecasted or predicted, and legislators being very concerned about basically blowing the forecast and saying what's going on, why are these rates in this particular program exceeding what we expected them to relative to the population or the volume of services in Minnesota overall. And similarly, in that same vein, that also comes in the prohibition of authorizing more than 24 hours of support in a daily unit for customized living services. So we were seeing rate inputs that were identifying people as having more than 24 hours of support in a given day, and that being potentially one of the drivers of those costs. And so the legislature was concerned about that.
She is the DHS. She is the director.
And wanting to put in, so what I think the way we implemented that was to put in the same rate limits that we have on elderly waiver customized living and not allowing that more than 24 hours of support per person per day. So, Jill, I don't know if that's kind of what you're looking for, or if you are wanting to go deeper on any of these issues, or you want me to just keep busting down the list. I don't know.
Yeah, no, I think if you could go a little bit deeper, I think the group would like to understand a little bit more about what information did the legislators get that went into the decisions that they made to pass some of the new regulations. The members here primarily serve a mental health, I'll say non-traditional assisted living population, not necessarily senior, and serve those CADI and primarily, and I'm generalizing based on the group, but this is the majority, serve those people who have some sort of mental illness. So what tends to happen is that the client population doesn't necessarily need ADL help. They need specialized nursing services to manage medication and need special services to manage behaviors, which doesn't fall always into a case mix grid very well at all. So we're just curious to know what information was provided to legislators to help them, that in turn made them make the decisions that they made. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the primary drivers was, again, that the state budgeting forecast that was identified as something that was of concern and was problematic to the legislature, along with a policy desire to create more options for people to live in non-provider controlled settings, and really trying to push that as our community-based model going forward. But I think, one of the things I'd be curious to hear from this group about is, we've identified for a long time that, serving people with disabilities in our area, really the the solve for kind of, having customized living be a service that's really designed to be delivered more in an assisted living setting was to transition to a community residential setting with the 245D and be able to capture some of those behavioral needs that might show up on that versus that aren't showing up on the customized living tool. And so, I think from a policy perspective, we are trying to move the system to where people with disabilities really that are on waivers, we really want services to match the environment that they're living in, and we're seeing a high variation in just not having the right protections in place under customized living to be able to make sure that those needs were being met. And so I'm curious to know, why conversion to a community residential setting and a license isn't a good option.
So I'll just open it up to the group. Does anyone want to unmute?
I can unmute and ask. That option hasn't been presented to us. I would be, interested to know what that option would look like, along with knowing, what the trajectory of that option would be, because I was aware of some language in there that looked like, if there were community residential settings that potentially beds may be eliminated after a while. So I would be cautious for us to jump into community residential settings and then all of a sudden 2 years from now we're getting our beds shut down. So that's one concern of mine. The other concern is that we don't really know the ins and outs of Waiver Reimagine. And so if we're getting, if we're having rate reductions now, we haven't been really briefed on what the rate reductions are going to look like for community residential settings, if any. And so if we're going to be transitioning to a community residential setting, we need to know everything. Like, we need to know, are our rates going to be going down? Are they going to be staying the same? Or what's going on? Because we have to do planning. We're in a really, really dire situation with staffing and inflation costs right now. So we have to plan for that. So I think A, the option hasn't been presented to us, but B, we need the data. We need to know what that plan would look like, and then even forecasting in the next few years with whatever DHS's plans are for community residential settings, what does that look like? So that's my comment.
In my one comment, I'll jump in there too, and then I'll real quick, and then I'll let Adan, if you want to say something. I think one of the unanswered questions for the group too is if there's other options, where will the state plan nursing services come in? How will that be taken care of? Because on last count, Medicare certified home care agencies can be enrolled to do state plan nursing, but there are very few Medicare certified home care agencies enrolled to do that state plan nursing, and even less that are willing to take on new clients at this time. So that has been a challenge too. It's one of our bullet points too. And if there are other options, how will that state plan nursing be provided? And so for this population of people, for this group, we're talking less ADLs and more behavior management and medication management is where the state plan nursing really would need to come in. And Dan, did you want to say?
Yes. If I can quickly say something. In addition to what we just talked about, a community residential setting, even if we have that option to do that, it's going to take us time to do that. Because based on the kind of buildings we're thinking we may be able to use, it's going to take nothing less than a year or so to come up with things like that. Because you have very limited kind of buildings for things like that. It's supposed to be like what I've been hearing in a commercial zoning area. We don't have a lot of that in a lot of areas where we have this residential buildings right now for group homes. So, just giving us this option and we're not having the time to gradually get to that destination is going to be a real problem.
All right, so let me see if I can respond to a couple of those things. So one piece of context that I think hopefully will be helpful by way of explanation, and then I'll get into some of the more specific questions. Is part of the concern with the 4-person CL settings, in addition to the rates getting higher and higher and drawing the attention of the legislature because it's more than we predicted it, and saying what are the rate limits for that. But the other issue was related to, are these settings starting to look like community residential settings that meet the definition of licensure and ought to be licensed? So there's both a rate issue concern about, are the right limits and controls in there from a state budget perspective, but also we have requirements that settings that provide a certain level of service to people, where a provider controls those settings, have to have appropriate regulations through licensure and protections for resident rights. And so I think that is another key policy driver behind the move to move away from CL settings that are 4-person and in converting to a community residential setting license. In addition, so there's kind of a twofold, is like, when is that setting supposed to be licensed? Is the state Medicaid agency operating from a regulatory perspective the appropriate amount of oversight for these settings? And how is that tied to the rates that are being delivered in those settings for people? So specific to CRS settings, so part of the legislation that established last session, that established the moratorium on new customized living settings of 4 people, was a specific exemption from the current moratorium on CRS settings. So we do have a moratorium on new building for those licensed 4-person settings, just to give you a sense of, there's that policy consistency of wanting to limit the growth of those smaller settings, but that there are exceptions to when new development can occur or new beds can be allocated within this corporate residential settings, community residential settings site. So one of those is you are a current provider of customized living services in that 4-person site or setting. You would be eligible for an exception to the moratorium for the community residential setting, and you would be able to convert into that licensed setting. And once Colin Stenberg can correct me if I'm wrong, but once that bed or that setting is set up, we don't take it away later. If the house closes, or there's a fundamental change in operation, that might be a different component. But Colin, do you want to talk a little bit about the operations of the CRS moratorium exception process and what that looks like for a business that would make that transition?
Yeah, you're right. Once you get the moratorium bed, it can't be taken away from you without your knowledge, of course. If there are licensing concerns, if certain violations occur, I'm sure that's not what any of you are planning on occurring. There are circumstances where licenses can be revoked. However, in nearly all cases, once you've been given a bed for the CRS moratorium, then it stays with your business.
So I think that's an option that absolutely is on the table for those of you that want to make a transition like that. You, of course, would need to meet the requirements for licensure under 245D and for the service of delivering community residential settings, but that is contemplated in sort of this transition, is making sure that there's a different pathway for providers that want to continue to providing that type of service. And that puts you into the DWRS rate setting methodology. So one thing I want to be really clear about is when we talk about rates for services, the legislature, especially the disability services, but I think most other Medicaid services, the legislature approves what those rates are. What gets complicated in the context of the services you all are providing is that there's sort of a rate for an overall service, but then there may also be a methodology to establish an individualized rate, like customized living or in community residential settings. So the overall rate structure is determined by the legislature, but when there's a service that has an individualization factor for a particular person, that's also laid out in statute. So DHS doesn't have the authority unilaterally to fundamentally change rate structures for the Medicaid program. That has to be a part of the legislative process. So in the context of Waiver Reimagine, Waiver Reimagine's support ranges for people are identified based on how people are currently using services and the rates that are being paid out for those services currently. So they're not in effect yet, but I don't know that there's no design within Waiver Reimagine to further cut rates. It might happen through the legislative process. What's going to change with Waiver Reimagine is people are going to be able to see what their support range budgets are, which is not something they have access to right now. They're going to see within this budget range, here are the services that I want to buy or I don't want to buy. So Waiver Reimagine isn't intended to cut or raise rates. It's intended to change how people understand and have access to the amount of Medicaid services that are allocated to them based on their assessment.
So one of the questions about Waiver Reimagined is, will small providers, how will they fit into this Waiver Reimagined process?
So,
and to date, have you had any input from small providers to date on the process?
We have done a fairly extensive amount of research and input from providers of all different sizes. I'd certainly be interested and open to working with a smaller group of providers to understand some of the impacts that we may have missed. And so certainly that offer is on the table to be able to really talk with providers on this call that are concerned about that. I think there's a lot of policy development we're still doing within Waiver Reimagine, and a lot of places and opportunities to provide input. So I'd be happy to work with you, Jill, on setting that up with a small group of providers or whatever works on your end.
And so did you address state plan nursing? I might have been taking notes.
Oh, sure. So I'm not sure that I understand the full nuance of your question, Jill. It's still, did I lose you all? Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can hear you. Yep.
Sorry about that. My computer just did something funny. State plan nursing services can be delivered in 4-person settings. I mean, I don't think that's changing. It doesn't, obviously you can't deliver PCA in provider controlled housing, but I don't think we anticipate anything fundamentally changing with home care nursing based on how it's being delivered today.
I almost got hit 2 times.
But I don't know if that answers your question.
Excuse me, whoever, somebody on the phone, will you please mute yourself if you're on the phone? Thank you. I think it's somebody on the phone. All right. Yeah, I think, so you were talking about, some of the 245D license in the CRS settings. I think one of our biggest concerns is if providers are looking at making a change to a different license type, what's missing out of that is nursing services. I think that's what we're concerned about. So, one of the biggest reasons people on this call are licensed assisted living and enrolled in customized living is to be able to, their clients being able to receive nursing services. And if they weren't in this type of setting, where will those nursing services come from? Because it's that behavior med management piece that requires an RN. And if providers were to make a switch away from this combination of enrollment and licensing, then how would that look for them? Because we have yet to kind of understand how those nursing services would be paid for in a different model.
Yep, that's a great question, and I think figuring out how to pay for and provide nursing services is a huge challenge across our system for a lot of different people. The rate framework for community residential setting has a component or an input for hours of nursing that a person needs. So the way it's factored in the service for CRSs is a part of the rate framework that goes in and creates that daily rate that's individualized to the person's need based on those inputs.
just gonna,
Can I jump in once real quick?
go ahead, John, thanks.
Yeah, I'm kind of a little different here. I am licensed 245D in some of our houses, and this particular house that we had to switch over, we used to be we've been operating this particular house with 10 people in it for almost 20 years now. And we were under the old housing with services license and all that. We've made all the transitions throughout, and now we're into the assisted living. And my main concern is I have 10 people living in the home, and under the 245D community residential setting license, I have a max of 4 people. So to split those 10 people up into 3 different homes would be very challenging, and that's my biggest concern. If 245D switched their model so we could house a few more people in a larger setting, I would be very open to switching to 245D in that particular home. But because of the size requirements for 245D, I've never been able to do that, and so I've been kind of stuck transitioning along from the housing with services to to the assisted living, and so we've been providing a high level of care across the board from 245D to the housing with services, and for 19 years. And so we've just kind of changed along with the licensing, but providing the same level of care nursing wise across the board, whether 245D or housing with services. But my main concern is the size requirements. And if there was I don't know if there's been talk with that or if there's a new license. I had heard from our 245D license in our county that there might be something opening up where we can maybe potentially house more people in a house, but the provider can't own the home, and then we can provide it in a different kind of setting. I don't know if you can speak to that, but that's just kind of my main concern with the whole switch over to the assisted living.
Yeah, and I don't know if we'll. One of the fundamental things about serving people with disabilities is a policy of not congregating a ton of people with disabilities in one setting and having services that aren't individualized. And John, I'm not asserting that you're saying your services aren't individualized, but we have to think about serving people on the under the disability waivers in the context of deinstitutionalization of people with developmental disabilities back in the 70s and 80s. And so there were a lot of really poor outcomes from those institutional settings by congregating large number of peoples in the area. So the policy trajectory over the last decade or so has been to really focus on creating smaller settings with the right level of regulation and oversight to make sure people were getting what they needed in those contexts. So John, are you still delivering CL? Did you convert to an assisted living license then?
Yes, we did. The one that was licensed housing and service with the 10 individuals, we did switch to the assisted living, and we're operating fine with that. It's working okay. We mainly work with people with mental illness. There's the main diagnosis of mental illness. We rarely work with anyone with a DD diagnosis. So across the board.
So I know in the interest of time, because we're nearing your half an hour and I know your time is valuable. One of the other bullet points, Natasha, that we sent over to you is about the group also feels like there's a lot of inconsistencies and lack of transparencies, whether it's from the counties, whether it's coming from the lead agencies. Hennepin County, for instance, we know that there's multiple lead agencies within the county. And so could you just clarify for us or just talk to us a little bit about how the direction comes from DHS to lead agencies? Some of the things you can see on our bullet points are, there's been heavy-handed tactics by lead agencies. There's counties who ask for documentation in addition to what DHS requires. Do you have any comments about lack of transparency that our providers are seeing, or any comments?
Well, I think, I mean, I don't know if I can speak to a lack of transparency, but we are a county administered system in which counties are delegated authorities under state statute to do assessment and support planning on behalf of the lead agency. So it is true that with 87 different counties, there are going to be different policies and procedures that counties may have about how they administer and authorize services. What we've done to improve consistencies at the county level is institute a statewide mid-choices assessment with training requirements and competencies, so that in an effort to sort of make sure that we're all working off the same assessment tool with the same programs, or with the same training. There is in a county, well, in any system, I think it's natural that there is a tension between what a provider wants in terms of a rate and what the assessment says versus what a county thinks. And so part of us as the state Medicaid agency is trying to create appropriate checks and balances that are known. And so sometimes, for example, I mean, I know that the way that a provider might provide information to MinChoices, they don't necessarily see that. The assessor may not agree that that level of service is needed based on the assessment that they're doing. So that is sort of, again, one of those checks and balances where we're asking our professional assessors to use their judgment about how that assessment lines up to a services and support plan. And similarly, I mean, I think that's kind of the best I can do with the time we have about sort of the, pros and cons of a county administered system. If there's any information that you all feel is lacking in terms of what the MinChoices assessment is and we could talk about getting you that information. I don't think it's a secret by any means, but there is a design and a separation between what the provider says the person needs and what the assessor and the person determine is needed based on the MinChoices assessment.
And I think where this group lands is where we were with elderly waivers several years ago, is that the information from the MinChoices assessment isn't flowing both ways with CADI clients. We saw that with elderly waiver years ago, and we're able to make some small changes to making sure that information could flow both ways. But we're seeing that now with this provider group too, is that information isn't flowing both ways. So, we will provide you some more information on that too, I think will be helpful.
Yeah, I think the more you can provide some specific, kind of examples of what you're struggling against, it helps us figure out, what is something we can work with the county on versus what is something that is a part of the regulatory infrastructure that has been put in place. But I realize, and I want to acknowledge that probably everything I talked through today isn't probably going to address concerns of people on this call. I mean, it's a big group. It's awesome to see providers engaged, and I certainly understand that some of, even though this was legislatively mandated information, that there's been a lot of changes happening and a lot of complexities in our system. And just know that, I'm happy to partner with all of you to try to at least provide information or work together on some positive changes that you guys see in terms of what's needed. So we
now we
can
have to go to 245.
follow up, Jill, and maybe think about what some additional next steps might be. I'm really interested in getting your perspective on Waiver Reimagine in particular, because that's definitely in the policy development zone, and we're trying to reach out and do as much engagement with different provider groups as well as people that use services and counties.
We made Patty be quiet. She actually kind of volunteered to be quiet, but before you go, Patty, I'll let you have the very last word. What's that?
Yeah, I mean, what I heard clearly from our members is they were not part of the process. They don't feel part of Reimagine planning, even though they put their name in to be a part of it. They were kind of surprised at the changes that have happened. They're not included in MinChoice planning, and all of this happened in an environment where they're suffering the same workforce shortages and competition for labor every other residential provider has. They have to pay more with less money, and so we're one of the goals I would hope would come after this meeting is improved communication. That we would be able to make sure they get the information they need in advance, and that your policy process is well informed by the good work that they do and why some of your processes aren't going to work. So that's as nice as I can be, Natasha, in hopes that we can forge some better communication moving ahead with the same goal that folks with, especially the vast majority of the folks are people with mental health needs, and we want to make sure everyone gets the person-centered care that they need in the places they call home. So we all have the same goal. And so thank you for taking the time today and for your team, and I'm looking forward to further conversations.
Same here, and yeah, I think absolutely better and more communication. I think, this is traditionally with leading age and care providers, you all tend to be more on the EW side, and so I think, that miss I can appreciate, and we need to rectify it. And I think it will be powerful as well to bring in our behavioral health colleagues as well to talk about how do we make sure that the system between the waiver and behavioral health services really is meeting needs of people with major mental illness, SPMI, and those kinds of supports. So I look forward to future conversations.
And Natasha, this is a representation of our membership of small providers. This is probably just a third of the members that we have in our membership serving clients. So thank you for joining us. Thank your whole team for joining us today and just giving us a half an hour of your time to just do this quick overview, because more to come.
Yep, absolutely.
Thank you so much.
Great. Thanks.
Thank you.
All right, everybody, stay on the line unless you have something else to do.
Can I say something? This is Frances.
Yes, please.
Yeah, I'm really grateful that DHL did come to listen to us, even though I felt like the time was very, very short. There are so many issues that we need to address, and 30 minutes would definitely not do justice to all the issues we have. One of the things I really wanted us to put across to them, I wanted to ask the question was mostly about the case mixes and how is it determined. And I know, unfortunately, because we have so many different issues and things to talk about, that we didn't get to it. But my big question would still be determining how the assessment is being done to put these residents into category. The funny thing is, for example, my resident nobody has ever came in person to know them or asked me for any documentation, yet they are in a case mix. Okay? So I'm the one dealing with these people every day, know their behavior, and you tell me, I'm going to sit in my office and just throw a spoon and tell you 2 hours of mental health a day would be perfect for your residents that you deal with on a 24-hour basis that I have never seen before, that maybe MN Choice assessment for them 30 minutes on the phone and only ask them and them only about their behaviors without even getting me involved that takes care of them, or the staff involved that takes care of them, or the doctors involved that takes care of them. Nothing. You just call the resident. I have so many residents that you call here. Do you have behavioral problem? No, I'm perfect. You understand it? Or do you cuss? No, I never cussed before. And by the time he gets put the phone down, he's insulting everybody in the house. And this is a person word, you are taking over my word and determining that he only needs 2 hours of mental health. And now what? Mental health, 1 hour is $23. Now you tell me I get 2 hours of mental health for him. So what? That's less than $60. And maybe how you expect me to take care of that person? I mean, this is just, and I don't know how we missed all of this when this was developing.
Much lower. Yes.
Like how was this make that?
She's right. That's
how
what's going
these
on.
things were going to affect small provider. I felt like we should have had more advocacy for small provider. I got 4 or 5 residents, and you expect me to survive as somebody who has 100 beds. If you give somebody with 100 beds or $200, of course they're gonna still survive, right? Because they can have 3 staff to 100 bed full staff and still. But I'm taking care of 4 or 5 residents. How you expect me to survive with those numbers, And nowadays they want you to even have 2 staff on each shift, at minimum. And each staff you're paying them $17 to $18 an hour. Can you figure the math for me? We're not gonna stay in business if this is going to continue.
So I'll do a little follow-up on what you had to say. Thank you. And we hear your story, and I know most of you on this call have the same story. So thank you. A couple different things I'll follow up with. So actually last week, Todd Bergstrom, who's also on our team, was unable to join this meeting today. So he's extremely involved and instrumental in the work that this group is going to be doing. And it's unfortunate he wasn't able to join us today. But he and I are working on some resources for you around case mix and how case mix is determined and how case mix is implemented. And we are going to be working on some resources to help you kind of figure that out as time goes on. We will be reaching back out to the group for more information as we develop those resources. We won't be done with them in a week, so bear with us. This is new for everybody. So we're all in this learning curve together, but we are committed to figuring out some resources to help you understand case mix and how it works and how the communication flows between the assessor, you, and the case manager. Because there's kind of three parties that are all involved. And the case manager isn't involved in the assessment, which obviously isn't involved with your day-to-day activities. So just so you know that we are committed to working with you on understanding and helping you with that. We understand. I totally hear what you're saying about the communication and transparency and them just telling you what you're going to accept. So we're gonna figure that out. I was encouraged, and I'll have Toby pop on too. I was actually encouraged today that Natasha was receptive to wanting to work with our group again. We're sure how DHS would respond to our meeting today. We know that it was short. We knew that we weren't going to get really too far into the weeds. We knew that coming into the meeting today, and hope you all understood that too, but we have a lot more work, but this at least gave us a temperature of where DHS is and kind of where we know we can further our work. Toby, do you want to talk about maybe a little bit of grassroots and where you see the group can take some of this information today?
Yeah, thanks, Joe. And thanks everybody for being on. I can certainly hear the frustration you're experiencing and you've experienced from the department. I think part of the goal of today's meeting with them was to start having more interaction and more of a dialogue with them, which I think we heard Natasha was open to at least a certain part of that. I think that they need to hear your voice. And so on the one side, there's the administrative side. We've now opened the door to have ongoing conversation with Natasha and her team. That can have positive effects on a lot of things that they control. But you also heard Natasha say explicitly, the legislature is the ones who told us to do this, right? So the House and the Senate and the governor all have to pass legislation that then says you have to do this. So if we want to start to be more proactive on the legislative side of things, there's a couple resources we already have, but there are other things that I would encourage you to do. First, resources we have, if you haven't been to our website and our advocacy page, we have resources for example, find out who your legislator is. So you can go to a map, there's a way you go onto the state site, you put in an address, and they tell you who's your congressperson, that would be federal, then also who's your state representative and who's your state senator. Those folks are going to be key for you to give input to when things come up. If you haven't signed up, like Jill said, you should be getting our advocacy in the action newsletter. There's one section that usually outlines what's going on at the state capitol, a couple articles about testimony, etc. The other thing I would tell you is if you want to get more interested in this, we're going to do our virtual day at the Capitol on March 9th. We do some walkthroughs on what issues we're dealing with, how to contact your legislator. We can help you facilitate meetings with your legislator. If you want to just reach out to me to say, hey, I want to find out more about who my legislator is, what's going on, how do I get in touch with them, send me an email or give me a call. I can start to walk you through the process of finding out who it is, and I can give you a little background on what they've been doing or what they've been working on. I will tell you this, if you don't talk to your legislator about these issues, they are going to just listen to the department, and they're just going to do what the department says, and they'll be making decisions without your voice. I think you heard from Natasha, legislators tell them what to do. You can tell your legislator what you want to do. And this is an election year, and it is election time. So the comment in the chat box is right on target. You gotta get in touch with them now to let them know what's going on. So look forward to hearing from you, and keep reading our action newsletter to find out more information as things move forward.
Yeah, of course.
And Toby, I know you're willing that if anyone on the call today has questions about how to do that or what to do, they can reach out to you directly, right?
Yeah, absolutely. You can just send me an email. I'll line up a time to talk to you. Give me a phone call. I'll talk to you. We'll figure it out. More than happy to help you.
And the other person who's more than happy to help you is Nicole. She's on here too. I think she's still on. So either Toby or Nicole. There she is. Maybe not.
So do you guys know how we can get to know our resident case mix? Is there a system, a way how you can get to know what case mixes your residence is in ahead of time so you can prepare for that?
You should be able to ask the case manager, and they should be able to tell you that information. If they are not telling you that information, I would request it to them in writing, so you have some documentation back that you've actually asked them for it. And if you're still not getting it, reach out to us, because we're gonna make sure we build that into our resources for you. But they should be able to tell you. They should be able to share that information with you.
Okay, I would really like to know how they are determining this case makers, and also is there can we get these choice assessment, because some case manager will provide it and some case manager will refuse it. So can we get the exact information, because some case managers tell us we are not supposed to give it to you. So is there a way we can get the exact instruction if they should or shouldn't give us the choice assessment? Thank you.
Yep. And those are part of the resources we'll be pulling together for you, so you have all of that. Yeah. Thank you.
I'm leaving. Now I'm gonna go.
Anybody else have any last comments or concerns? We will be kind of processing this internally too to figure out what our next steps are. I think we have some here. Data is king, right? So we have to start talking less about I'm not getting reimbursed enough, and more about what services your residents aren't receiving. So we can start talking about what your residents receive and what they don't receive as a result of the payment. So we need to start talking in terms of the payment you receive and how that affects your residents. I think legislatures will hear you better when you talk about how the payment you receive affects the care that your residents get. I think that's key, and I think that legislators will respond to that type of communication a lot better than I'm not getting enough money to do the job, even though that's still the case.
And I will add to the data point. So there's a cost to everyone, right, that the state pays for. So if you weren't caring for the people you were serving, who would? And at what cost? And so that's another data point that, frankly, we've utilized a lot over the course of the years. It's a lot more expensive for someone to be sitting in the emergency department at HCMC for a long time than it is in your buildings. So that is another way that we have to think this through, is if not you, if you were all closed, where would these people be? Where would they live? And at what cost? Because I do think that we've heard for years about the caddy costs being driven up. At the same time, one of the reasons why there are so many folks, especially in Hennepin County or in the metro area, with serious and persistent mental illness that need support, is because we've closed the psych units and we've closed Anoka, we've closed the places that they used to go to. And so as a result, we also need to say, you know what, yes, it costs more, but it costs less than it used to. And so I think there's a way that we need to figure out how to quantify that. And I think that's the other data point that I know is on our docket.
Another point I wanted to add to that, what you just said, another point is we are having less people maybe even in ER right now. The cost for ER visits going down, so that's why the cost for caddies going up. So I just wanted to point out.
Dan, I know you. Just 1 second, Zania. Just 1 second. Dan, you've been trying to talk for like ever. I'm
sorry. My name is Adam. It is actually, Barry made the point that I was trying to actually make. For all the meetings that I've been in with DHS, MDH, legislators, they don't have an answer for the question of where do my clients go. It's obvious, that the specific clients that we serve are people starved, and they don't have an answer where they're going to go. They're not. If my clients leave, and let's say my assisted living facilities, I rent the house that we're in. Let's say the rent doubled or tripled because it's niche, right? And I'm forced out. I gotta close. My clients cannot go to another assisted living facility other than one that's grandfathered, which are all being, closed pretty much, right? But they don't have anywhere else. There's no other program that they can transfer to. So what I don't understand is I know DHS and MDH would like to say, oh, this is the legislators making us do this, but they are the ones that are, they have a huge input on what the legislator passes. They are the ones that are talking to them about the direction of programs and what's working, what's not working, how things should work, right? And it's not like the legislator passed these laws and statutes out of vacuum. They're the ones that are doing the input. So they don't have an answer for where do you want my clients to go? Obviously this business, you don't want us to be an assisted living, a customized living facility, because you're saying, the laws and statutes don't cover, for all the work you're doing, right? So you have to be licensed this way in order to make sure the clients are okay, apparently. And yet you're saying we want more smaller settings, more. It's so confusing what they're trying to say, and it's never clear. They don't have the specific answers that we're looking for. Like simple answer. My client that I currently serve cannot go to another assisted living facility unless they are similar to me. Because an assisted living facility that got the license just now cannot accept anybody that's younger than 55 years old, right? So where do they go?
Hi, Jim.
And all the meetings that they've been in, they're kind of pushing around that, and it's like, well, the customized living facility was not, being overseen properly, this and that, and so it had to be assisted living, but
I will get a copy of
Thank you. Oh, wait, did you have something to say? Yeah, I'm sorry.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for giving us this opportunity to talk. I've been listening keenly to every contributor, and I think at this stage we have to be very strategic, because it's very obvious. It's more like a game, in my opinion, throwing game between DHS, the case managers, and the legislator. Natasha just made a clear statement right now, like it is from the legislative side, not from their side, that the legislators are kind of compelling them to do what they are doing. I want to believe the legislators are being reactive, seeing the healthcare costs blow up, but we know we are not just the cost drivers of that, because I am pretty convinced that most of these decisions they are making are not data backed. If these decisions were data backed, they would have come out really clear, this is what we're doing. So I think we should go back to our drawing board, and I want care provider to do this for us. You are the face with which we can have a common voice. And if we're going to have a common voice, we should speak the same words to our legislators. I have sent an email now to Nicole and Toby. I want to be a part of that talk. We need to itemize the exact things we want to see, and we want to make sure all the legislators are hearing the same thing, so that we can put pressure on them to make them see things from our own end. And lastly and finally, we should understand that our collective goal is to provide for the safety and the comfort of these clients. We are not the most important people. DHS is not the most important people. The legislators are not the most important people. The clients we serve are the most important people. And whatever decision we make, whatever approach we take, whatever strategy we prefer, affects people's lives, not just numbers. Thank you.
Thank you, Larry. That's well said. Thank you. And yes, Toby and Nicole are listening, and we will work on some resources for good talking points as well. Fabulous. All right, Gloria, I know, were you trying to say something too? We're almost nearing our time. Did you want to say something?
No, that's okay. I think enough has been said. Wait, just one thing, that I've been a provider for about 20 years, and the gist of it is that the changes are going to be made. And what we have to really figure out is how we're going to be able to support. I have waiver clients. I have, I don't know, about 10 other residential sites, but I have this new community-based site that I licensed for 9 people. And I'm kind of in the same shape that the other guy mentioned. He had a facility for 10. But I was a part of this term, they say that they're looking, I don't remember the term, community-based or really for the people, you know, what they're trying to do. What happened with the 245 waivers, that they did the moratorium, right? And then with the moratorium, we were not allowed to open up any licensed facilities. And then this community base started, and you start to increase. And so they realized that now they're in the same situation they were in when we had the license waiver sites. And they're, yeah, I just want to say that we just need to really figure out a way to make them understand that the people that we're serving are not people that are really people that can live in an apartment on their own. They are people that need the support that you are providing. And somehow in their heads, they believe that there are individuals that we're providing in the home that don't really need the support that they receive. And that's absolutely not the truth. So that's my take on it.
Sonia, I cut you off. Did you want to say any last thing?
I guess my last statement is that I don't know how much we can trust transferring over to another program without knowing exactly, without having some type of, you know, clear guideline from DHS about what the rates look like and what their plan is, because there is language where they're planning on, you know, taking certain amount of beds depending on the program. So I think that needs to be very clear. So I don't necessarily just trust us jumping over to whatever they're proposing without them being very clear on how that even looks like, or like what it even looks like as far as what we're doing.
I would agree because they did reduce our rates. They reduced the waiver, the 245 waiver rates. They reduced them. For 5 years, we did not get rate increases. We got reductions in rates. And the very beds that they're talking about licensed right now are the beds that they set the moratorium on. So it's strange to me. So.
Yeah, thank you. We hear you about that too, and I keep saying state plan nursing, but I haven't yet figured out how nursing services will be paid for, and that's kind of my big thing that you'll keep hearing out of my mouth is I don't understand how that gets paid.
With community residential settings, there is nursing in the rate sheet.
I understand that, but it's not the same type. Yeah.
It's not the same type. So if they can like really allocate what that's supposed to be for, I mean, it might work, but the biggest thing for me is that they have plans to cut the rates for 245B and waiver reimagine. I mean, that's, everybody can read that. Like, they have a clear guideline of what they are saying that the rate should be, like the maximum rate. So if they're going to switch us over to 245B and then waiver reimagine passes through, we're going to be subject to that maximum rate that they already have posted for waiver reimagine. So I think it's not ideal for us to just think we're going to transfer over to something and then, you know, in 2 years time they're going to be like, oh, sorry, we're cutting the rates. Like, you know.
Well, we're at time, so I hate to cut off the discussion. I know I'm thankful that we have this group and that you are all here today and participating. We had, I just want to say this, we had 32 people who RSVP'd, and at our max, we had 62 people on the call. So my ask to the group is to make sure that when you receive communication from us, if you will RSVP to meetings, this is a formal meeting now. This is a board sanctioned committee now, so we have we want to make sure that you get appropriate CEUs for attending these meetings at the end of the year. So we need you to RSVP when you see meeting notices come along. We'll do our best to make sure we captured everybody on the meeting today. But thank you for your time. This isn't the end of the discussion. There's much more to come. And you will be hearing from us all again soon. So, in the meantime, if you need anything at all, reach out to any one of us, and we're here for you. So, thanks for joining, everybody. Appreciate your time.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.